2020. Thank you to those of you joining us on the GBN Television Facebook page, the Grenada Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel, GBN Channel 7, 11 and 20, and the listeners of Classic 105.5, 105.9. It is Tuesday. As usual, on this day of the week, we facilitate a representative of the National Democratic Congress, and in this new dispensation of recognizing social distancing, we have implemented technology here at the GBN, and we have the Public Relations Officer of the party, Claudette, joining us via Skype. Those of you who can see us would see the computer here, and those of you on radio, well, as usual, you'll just listen to the program. Good morning, Miss Joseph.
Good morning, and how are you doing?
I am not too bad.
All right, yeah, this new social distancing thing, you know.
Yes, we have to adapt.
Yes, we all have to adapt, and we hope that we get to a point really soon where we are back to normal. I'm sorry, a big truck is passing outside.
Understood.
Yeah. And so good morning to all of your listeners and viewers on all of your platforms, radio, television, online, and of course on social media. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Happy to be back. Yes.
All right, well, let's get right into it. The hot topic these days, coronavirus, COVID-19. Most recently, well, yesterday I saw a news release from the National Democratic Congress calling on a shutdown, a total lockdown of the country, yes?
Yes, we think, you know, we can't continue to be reactive. The minister and his team and the government, they got out of the blocks late as far as we are concerned in the NDC. They started I think taking this thing seriously a bit belatedly. If you would recall, sometime in March, early March, I think around the 3rd of March, the NDC, we put out a release then calling on restrictions on flights coming from certain destinations. And at the time, you know, those were the hotspot destinations, and some people thought it was too early for that. The idea is that we should have tried as much as possible to stay in that bracket where we have no cases, and we were looking at what was happening around the world, and a lot of countries had imported cases. So that is why we thought some proactivity early on in the month would have helped. That didn't happen, and we must commend, as we've said in our subsequent releases and in the address made by our party leader, Franca Bernardine, last week, we do in fact commend the authorities, Minister Steele, the CMO, and the COVID coordinator, Dr. Mitchell. We do commend them for the efforts that they have been making recently, and we are happy to continue to be part of the effort. Now that said, we think that we should have, now that we've had our first case, yesterday there was some talk from fairly reliable and senior sources that it may soon go up to about 5. And we think under the WHO guidelines, that takes us to level 2, right? Which means stringent measures, certain measures should be adapted and put in place and enforced. And one of those measures include stringent social distancing. And what we are saying in the NDC is that we cannot urge people to engage in social distancing, meaning to stay 6 feet away from each other, and at the same time continue to have our buses running, our public transportation running, continue to have all offices, including government offices, and so these enclosed, small air-conditioned rooms running where several people share the same space. Those two things are inconsistent with the requirement for social distancing. And we see that even before government said anything, the Grand Anse bus drivers have taken a very proactive stance and said, look, we're not going to run until proper measures are put in place. And we think that that was quite a responsible position to take. And I believe there was some kind of agreement among the St. David bus drivers whereby they would reduce the amount of passengers. But even so, in light of what the World Health Organization was saying up to yesterday, if you go to the World Health Organization website, you will see there a release saying that they are considering changing the status to treat the virus as airborne and therefore ramp up the level of protection in the first instance for healthcare workers. So it's a new disease. That's why it's called a novel coronavirus. It's a new disease, and we learn something new every day. There was a article on the New York Times yesterday saying that one of the symptoms they're discovering now is that you lose your sense of smell and taste, and you may not have any other symptoms, and in that period you're contagious. So it's new, and I think we in our society, with our very weak healthcare system, we all accept that we have a very weak healthcare system, a system that is wanting in many respects. So we need to take these preventative and precautionary measures very seriously. That's why we've made the call that we have.
But even, you said earlier that you think the government acted late in the measures that they implemented. Grenada was still one of the very last countries in the region, or around the world, as a matter of fact, to get the virus.
Well, the thing about it, that is true. In terms of, that is true, and there's a good reason why the word confirmed is used. The fact that you have one confirmed case doesn't necessarily mean that you only have one case on island. The only way that countries find out how severe the virus is within it is by conducting testing. And we have to agree, Blossom, that we have not been doing a whole lot of testing. Look at what's happening in the United States. They were not testing before, and therefore the numbers were relatively low. Now it feels as an explosion, but that's because they're now testing. So officially, we've only had, 18 tests done? We only have had about 18 reported tests done and one result. Once the testing becomes more frequent, you would get different results. And that's what the scientists are saying. So we should not sit back and become complacent and say, well, we're one of the last countries to have a positive case, and we only have one so far. The question is, how much testing are we doing?
With the proposed, or with the NDC's desire for a shutdown of the country, and specifically use of public transportation, what alternatives do you see? Because I think there are a lot of, and even in the news release you pointed out, there are people who basically can't shut down, like the medical professionals and so on.
Well, listen, when you have a state of emergency, for example, in place, or anything similar to it, you have the emergency services still functioning. That's the norm, right? The sanitation services, the meteorological services, the healthcare services, security services. These sectors of the society must continue to function in order for law and order to be maintained. So it is not like if it is not doable, or we haven't actually experienced it here before. In fact, we've experienced even more severe forms of shutdown in the past before. 1983 comes to mind. St. Lucia yesterday declared a state of emergency. Now, and the thing about it, when you do that, there are certain powers triggered under the title of the legislation is slipping me now, but under the relevant legislation, the chief medical officer will then acquire certain powers. The police will have extra powers to restrict the movement of people, because that is what will contain and eventually eliminate the virus from among us. So yes, we acknowledge that there are certain aspects of this society will have to continue to run in government offices in a very limited capacity and all of that.
So what's an alternative to the public transportation that we have now, the buses?
Well, I think we mentioned in our release the employers of these essential services, which will be mainly the government, providing sanitized transportation for those workers who are not mobile. So you have some form of transportation for them, which would be sanitized on a regular basis.
But that would be more expenses for not just government, but the others, employers of essential service providers. And many of them are already complaining of a loss in revenue because of reduced economic activity. So with less revenue and more expenses, how willing maybe would they be?
No, but Blossom, that is why the Prime Minister rolled out his stimulus package, the package to cushion. I think the first one on the pretty flyer that was put out, the first one they mentioned the buses, taxi drivers, and transportation services. Not so? I'm speaking off the top of my head, but that is my recollection. Either number one or number two there. A sum of, I think, over $2 million was allocated as support for these services. Correct. These are not normal, right? And so that is where the money should come from. We can't have a situation again where we have a lot of empty promises. We can't construe those measures that the Prime Minister has announced as empty promises. And if we see that they need to be fulfilled and they are not being fulfilled, it would be all of our responsibilities to impress and pressure the government to make good on the promise made. The Prime Minister rolled out a package of financial support for these sectors. So now let's do what we have to do, right? So as to safeguard the lives of our people. The lives of our people are more valuable than any amount of money. In our view in the NDC, people come first, not money.
Also in the news release, the NDC shared concern about the scheduled British Airways, that is scheduled to arrive in the island tomorrow, God willing. Why the concern?
Well, if you look at around the Caribbean, particularly the English-speaking Caribbean, almost all of the islands and territories that have recorded cases of the COVID-19, those cases were imported from the United Kingdom. Almost all of us. There is one source. And what we've learned in the last week or two, in fact, Minister Steele said so himself last week, Tuesday, at the post-cabinet briefing, that unfortunately, the first world country, particularly the United Kingdom and the United States, who we always rely on to operate at a high level, have not done so in this case. They have not done what they should have done in the early. They did not do, rather, what they should have done in the early days. And therefore, in the United Kingdom, we are waiting for the UK to become the next hotbed. And that's what the scientists are saying. The next week or two, you're going to see a spike. New York is the epicenter in the United States, right? So what the minister said very clearly is true. That's what the information that is coming out of these countries, that's what it's showing, and that's what the scientists are saying, that these people did not take the precautionary and containment measures that they should have in the early days, and therefore they are hotspots for the virus. And I guess just as in the days of colonialism, they're importing the virus to us, as was done to the Amerindians 400 years ago, 450 years ago. So we think no, there's been an announced lockdown from midnight last night of the airport. The minister mentioned there was this one flight that was the exception, scheduled to take people off island. Now let me say very clearly, if the flight is to just take UK nationals off island, we don't have a problem with that. All right, but we heard two messages coming through. On Sunday, the minister very clearly said that the flight will also be bringing home people. Now, we know, Blossom, that the self-quarantining measures, that is not working in some instances. There are multiple reports of people not observing, coming in and not observing the instructions given on arrival to self-quarantine. We are not aware that there is any central quarantine point where people must go, separate from the rest of society for the requisite 14 days. There has been no announcement that any such place exists in Grenada. What we do know is that people are being requested to exercise discipline and to self-quarantine, and that is not happening. So we are saying, rather than running the risk of importing further cases, let us not do so in relation to that flight. That's all we say. The lives of Grenadians first.
When Dr. Martin appeared on the program yesterday, he sort of gave an update that the flight was coming empty. So I guess that was the updated information from the minister's statement on Sunday. From Sunday at 1:30 to Monday morning at 9. Right. Well, I'm guessing, I'm assuming, because what Dr. Martin said yesterday was that the flight is coming empty to go back with UK nationals.
Now, you see, the other thing about that, Dr. Martin, with all due respect to me, did not clarify that. Look, I know yesterday the minister said that the flight will have passengers, but we have heard, and this change has been made. And I'll tell you this, Blossom, up to yesterday, if you check on the British Airways website, that flight was still showing available seats.
A number of flights as well, including Liet, and so just up to yesterday, we're still advertising many flights. I guess with the sudden announcement of the closure of the airport, they were not forewarned. I'm not sure. So that could possibly explain why information is still showing.
I'm just saying, what we noticed, and what the two, as we said in the release, there were two inconsistent messages coming through. One where the minister clearly said that there are people who would come, to use his words, to ride out the storm. And then yesterday, the chief medical officer, without saying that he's correcting what the minister said less than 24 hours before, asserting something different. So that's the concern we have. And we are saying in the NDC, when you have these kind of contradictory messages coming through from the authorities, that is what breeds a lot of mistrust and speculation and misinformation. So in that regard,
Understood. What assistance can the NDC provide to the government to help Grenada continue to fight the escalation of cases here in Grenada, COVID-19? What assistance can the party provide?
Right. Well, the thing about it, the NDC from inception, we reached out and have been in touch with the minister, and I must commend him. He's been very cooperative. We've had a very good channel of communication going, and the chief medical officer as well. The way we see ourselves assisting in two specific respects, and we have communicated those to the government on various levels. our first mode, which we have been doing. If you look at our social media platforms and so we have been assisting heavily in the public information um, campaign, right? Public information and education. We've been doing quite a lot of that. In fact, on Sunday last week Sunday, we had the chief medical officer as our primary guest on our Heartbeat program. Then Sunday, 2 days ago, more than half, about 45 minutes of the program was in fact dedicated to the COVID-19 disease and dissemination of information. It's not me. Actually, it's coming from you, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We just had maybe a brief power outage or so, but we'll try to get that sorted out. Yeah.
But am I still on?
Yes, you're still on. The program is still going ahead.
Right.
The other thing go ahead. Go ahead.
The other thing we've done is that so far we have been invited to 2 meetings by government. One a few Thursdays ago, where we made very specific contributions as to what steps we think government should take. Some of those and new ones were included in the national address that our party leader delivered on last Thursday. And yesterday, our party leader had a direct encounter with the Prime Minister. So we are working together, and we have put out, our party leader has indicated that there are a number of people within the NDC with the necessary training and expertise to assist in this crisis, and we are willing to make, and these people are willing to make themselves available to assist at every level, wherever called upon, because we appreciate that this is for Grenada. Okay, so and Prime Minister Mitchell and Party Leader Franca Bernardine actually had a meeting yesterday where areas of cooperation was discussed, and therefore we are looking forward as the main opposition party in Grenada to join hands with everybody, all of the people, the government, the religious community, everybody who's going to be part of this fight. We are going to be there as well.
The other topic that I wanted to ask you about was the latest development as it relates to government and WRB. We had just last week the announcement of the court case, and so from the NDC's point of view, could you just first of all break it down in layman terms what the news release meant, or what the judgment, that's what I was looking for, what the judgment means?
Yeah. No, Blossom, if you would recall, the last time I was on the program, which was a few weeks ago, I very clearly predicted that we are going to lose and we are going to be saddled with a burden of over $200 million. Now, unfortunately, that has come to pass. What we see happening is a propaganda campaign, very distastefully carried on in the midst of this crisis that we face by government. You saw some animated ads going around, and first of all, it started with the news release. They tried to make a preemptive strike even before the judgment was available to some of the counsel in the case. They made a preemptive strike and put out this misleading statement, deliberately misleading statement, which suggested that the sums, the $72 or so million that the government was ordered to pay is EC dollars. Did not specify it was US. Now that is US dollars, which calculate to about 194 million EC. Now we have to add to that the fees that government paid its legal advisors and representatives in the case. And if you see a copy of the judgment, you would see the size of the government legal team was 3 times that of WRB in the case. So there is that additional cost, and also there is the post-judgment interest, which would continue to run daily for as long as the judgment sum remains unpaid. Now, it came out very clearly in the judgment blossom, very clearly, the same history that we in the NDC have been talking about. That it was a history of mistrust. It was a history of a personal vendetta that Minister Bowen and the NNP has in relation to this matter, right? In fact, one of the points the NDC has been making over the years in response to government's claim that it was such a bad deal, right, is that look, you had an opportunity. There was nothing stopping you from renegotiating that deal and getting a better deal. In fact, the NNP administration got parliamentary approval after they came into office in 1995, went to Parliament and debated this agreement that the NDC had reached with WRB, and they got parliamentary approval to go and renegotiate the deal, and they did and couldn't. And it is so dishonest. I could only call it dishonesty for them to continue to assert that it was such a bad deal. Also, dishonesty and a plain lie to assert that the sale price for the shares was only 15 million. It was double that. It was $30 million for a bankrupt. $30 million, Blossom, for a bankrupt company. That's what WRB paid. $30 million for 50% of the shares in a bankrupt company. And those people who want to continue to doubt that, I invite you to go to George Grant's site, GrenadaBroadcast.com, or you can Google the Warren Report or the Commission of Inquiry into the sale of into the conduct and management of certain assets in Grenada. The Warren Report will come up. And if you go to chapter 3 of that report, which starts at about page 52 and goes on to about page 59, it gives you there the state of Grenlec under Gregory Bowen. The commissioners in the Warren Commission, they put the blame squarely on Gregory Bowen. They called him by name in that chapter 3 of that report. And it will give you a clear picture of the Grenlec that the NDC sold half of in 1994 for $30 million. Half of a bankrupt, bursted, state-owned entity for $30 million. That's the hardcore facts. They can't deny it. It's there in black and white, right? And, you know, I just want to tell you a little bit of what the tribunal said, right? All the noise they make. And the tribunal totally debunked this thing that it was a bad deal and they couldn't do nothing about it and whatnot. Apart from the parliamentary records we have that debunks that lie, the tribunal said at paragraph 9 of the judgment, it concluded that neither the share purchase agreement, which is the agreement that between WRB and government, unconstitutionally fettered the government of Grenada. They said the share purchase agreement did not impose any fetter on the government of Grenada. When the NNP office returned to government in 2014, it was clearly not deterred in any way from enacting the 2016 restructuring legislation, right? So the tribunal is here saying, look, you weren't deterred in any way in 2016, right? So why were you deterred in 1995? Why are you saying that you couldn't do it in 1995 and then you came and you did it in 2016? This is the tribunal speaking at paragraph 9. So I want Grenadians to understand that all we are getting is a whole lot of deception and dishonesty from our government in relation to Grenelec. It all boils down to one man who had to leave the company under unhappy circumstances. And here's what's happening. What you see happening is some of the same people who were around at the time that created this bad blood and was part of this whole bad blood between the WRB people and the government of Grenada. We see Bowen was a leader then. He's still there leading this thing. And some of the other characters who were dismissed for different reasons from Grenelec, they're now on the regulatory commission and they're part of, they're right around, it's the same people. It's all we're going to get at you now. We're going to get back at you. That's what it is. It's to get back at the NDC to prove a point that they've been trying to prove since 1994, that we struck a bad deal. And it's also to get back at the WRB people who, when they came into Grenelec, showed very little tolerance for incompetence.
But
no, it is also a myth that they have been putting out that electricity rates will be reduced. All of the experts in the field say differently. Even just yesterday, I was speaking to a very respected expert in the field, and he said that's a joke. That's a joke. And these are not people with any political axe to grind, right? These are people who are saying, if you look at the thing, and if you look at it from a common sense point of view, WRB paid $30 million in 1994 for half of a bankrupt Grenelec, right? Today, based on Gregory Bowen's actions, and the tribunals made that very clear, that the cost to us could have been far less if they had settled this matter between 2016 and 2017. If they had settled this matter. If you read the former Attorney General last article there, he speaks of Bowen and so walking out of a meeting where the people were trying to negotiate in SGU in 2017. They walked out on the people. So they refused, and I could tell you that from my own personal knowledge, they were never in any mood to be conciliatory.
But going back to the judgment, in the news release that the government sent out, they titled the news release, and I quote here, "Golden opportunity opened up for electricity consumers in Grenada to obtain cheaper electricity." So are you saying now that is, I don't want to say a lie, but it's not
lie.
true?
Yeah, you don't want to say Blossom. Let me say it. It's a lie. It's a lie. Because listen to me, Blossom.
But even in the Prime Minister's address last Friday night, I believe it was, he mentioned that there will be a 30% reduction. So he doubled down on.
Well, listen to me. That is complete deception. Complete deception. First of all, in relation to what the Prime Minister said last Friday, if anybody who is following what's going on the global market, the oil prices globally, right? It has significantly dropped all over the world. In fact, I don't know why our gas at the pumps, why it is still the price it's at.
It went down last week by some cents.
Doing that. Sorry?
It went down last week by some cents. I think it was 6 cents, 9 cents.
Yeah, a few cents. But that is not reflective. That is not reflective of the drop globally at all. So,
but could it be from that angle that he promises the electricity
no, but
rates
that
will
has
go down?
nothing to do with him and government is giving any stimulus package. Think about it. They just get a cut tail from Grenelec. They're going to negotiate any reduction in price of electricity with Grenelec. There's no need for that because of electricity in Grenada, right, is dictated or controlled by the fuel price, The Grenelec officials will tell you that since the company was bought in 1994 to now, the difference to the Grenadian consumer in generation costs, because on your bill you have two, you have your fuel charge and you have your generation charge, right? The difference in price from since 1994 to now, it's 2 cents. 2 cents. The cost of generating electricity hasn't gone up. So from the company side, they haven't really increased electricity costs on us. The problem is the fuel costs, and that is based on the price of fuel and all the surcharges and so imposed by the government. So if the rates go down by 30%, that is only reflective of the global drop in the cost of fuel. Nothing whatsoever to do with the Prime Minister. That was just complete misleading and deception. It's actually disgusting, quite frankly, Blossom. It's actually quite disgusting, because it's not true. And to get back to the point now about the promise of a reduction in electricity costs. Now remember, when the bill was tabled in the Parliament, I don't know if you remember that performance that the members of the House of Representatives, all 15 of them, put down in June 2016 when they were debating that new Electricity Supply Act. And they were promising almost immediate reduction in rates. And based on what the commission, the tribunal, the ICSID tribunal is saying in the judgment, that there was nothing stopping them from going ahead, because that's not exactly what they did. That is what triggered the repurchase event, the fact that they went ahead without negotiating properly with WRB and passed the law. That is what triggered it. And once they passed it and it came into force, there was nothing stopping them from proceeding to do all that they promised under the 2016 Act. We are in 2020. And we have seen no change. And there is nothing. They can't say it is the case that prevented them from bringing in their new supplies, all the promises they made since 2016. Because the judgment is clear that it has nothing to do with that. So far, they have not fulfilled that promise in 4 years, right? And what the experts are saying is that if any new investor that has to pay over $200 million, because that's the price tag, that is what WRB has to get in order to transfer back those shares. And any investor that has to put out that money, right? How would they recover it? How would they recover it except by an increase in rates? What we will see instead is an increase in rates, not the reduction they're promising. And then they're not answering the question as to how our small market is going to accommodate these other suppliers of electricity that they're talking about.
Before you go on, Ms. Joseph, I just need to take a very quick break. It's 20 minutes to 10. I'm late to the break, so I'm just going to take a quick break and come back inside. This is To The Point. Stick and stay.
The Grenada Airports Authority wishes to advise the general public that the flying of kites within the vicinity of the airport is prohibited. Prohibited areas include, but not limited to, Caliste, Frequency, Fort Judy, St. Paul's, Mount Parnassus, and Mount Morris, and the vicinity of Lauriston Airport in Carriacou. Flying of kites poses serious threat to aircraft safety, as kites can be easily ingested into aircraft engines or become entangled in aircraft propellers, resulting in engine failure with tragic consequences to aircraft passengers and persons on the ground. The Grenada Airports Authority, therefore, urges the general public to cooperate towards ensuring the safety of aircraft operations into and out of the Maurice Bishop International Airport. The Grenada Airports Authority will be seeking the assistance of the Royal Grenada Police Force in dealing with violators of this notice. Let us all play our part in making this Easter kite flying season a safe one.
Welcome back to The Point. We are speaking with Public Relations Officer of the National Democratic Congress, Claudette Joseph, via Skype as we continue to practice social distancing. At this time, we are going to open the phone lines 435-2041. You can also pose your questions, queries, comments, concerns on the GBN Television Facebook page or the Grenada Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel. Before I take the very first phone call, in the interest of time, if you can please keep those questions to 1 minute or less so we can facilitate as many calls as we can. We can skip all the preambles and so on. Just get straight to the question or the comment so we can facilitate the phone calls and the messages. Let's go to the phone lines. Good morning.
A pleasant good morning. Before I express myself, I need to let you know, miss, that your transmission station don't seem to be working properly. At times you hear it, other times as though you cut off. I do not agree with the NDC to close down the port and close the place down. What happens? Merchants have ordered goods. Before this incident has happened, the ships are on their way to bring in whatever goods are being ordered. What do they do? Go back with the goods to its origin, or put it somewhere else? I can't see that.
Thank you very much, caller. Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Joseph.
Let me clarify. We did say in our statement, except for, essential services and so on. The minister did say that a closure of the airport is in fact, caller, what we are calling for is not. I'm hearing a big feedback, Blossom.
Yeah, I'm hearing it as well. But go on, I can hear you. Go ahead.
What we are calling for is not for closure of the airport and the seaports, because the government has already done that. And we don't have an issue with the way they have done that aspect of it, because what they've said very clearly is that the airport and the seaport will continue to operate to bring in essential supplies, meaning food and medical equipment and medicine and that kind of thing. So that aspect of our operation and our economy will not be affected, at least not by a virtual shutdown. What we are talking about is the social distancing that is required, because more and more the information coming out is that is what will curb and contain the virus. And we are simply saying that we cannot effect social distancing when you have to go and squeeze up on a bus. You can't be 6 feet apart from the passengers in a bus. I mean, it's just a practical common sense thing. It's not physically possible. And when you go to the office and 5-6 of you in a small air-conditioned room together, how do you contain the spread of the virus in that way? And more what we're seeing is that the virus is manifesting in many different ways, and a lot of people showing no significant symptoms or no symptoms at all, but they are spreading it.
All right, let's go back to
the caller. Don't misread what we're saying at all.
Let's go back to the phone lines. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Blossom. How are you?
I'm good.
Claudette is Randall. So here's what. The Bahamas today, I believe, has instituted a 24-hour curfew for the next, I believe, 7 days. You all could check it out. This is what is needed now. Blossom, I listened to a lady yesterday and today complain about, her husband being out there in Canada and all of that. And I understand the frustration. But you see, right now, the government has to take some very, very stringent decisions. It's not going to please everybody, but it is for the safety of Grenadians. And we cannot play with this virus. Every day you look at Italy, you look at Spain and what is happening outside there, it is a cause for serious concern. Social distancing is paramount. And if it is that we have to stop everything that we are doing now, just for 7 days or 14 days or more, let's just do it, Blossom. More cases in Grenada. We don't need any more cases in Grenada. So I'm supporting the shutdown of everything, and let's get this thing under control. Thank you very much, and have a blessed one.
Thank you very much, Randall.
And Blossom, let me just repeat again. The government has already announced a closure of our airport and our seaport, except to bring in cargo and so. So that is not what we are proposing at all. We're talking about inside now, right? Imagine, imagine you have a couple of people in the ministerial complex who are infected. You can imagine what's going on there.
Let's go.
So, I mean, we just being practice. This is what is required. These are not.
Let's go back to the phone lines. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you this morning?
I'm good.
Yes, I'm calling because I have a concern. Two questions. Does the World Health Organization recommend, is it the recommendation that national Grenadians are not allowed to come back home? This is one question. I'm sorry, I'm going to load on my TV. I'm hearing myself. And should a country turn its back on its citizens in a time of need?
Thank you, caller. Ms. Joseph?
Yes, the world, that's not within the purview of the World Health Organization to dictate what sovereign countries do in terms of their ports of entry. But what we have seen is that if you pay attention, look around the world, Trinidad airport is closed. Our airport is closed. The Canadian, the
Jamaica,
UK, most of the countries of the world where this thing is being impacted, you have a closure. Last week there was a call by Prime Minister Trudeau. All Canadians, you must get back to Canada by a certain point. After that, the airport is closed. All right. We are not advocating turning our backs on our citizens at all. We are not advocating turning our backs on our citizens at all. But I'll tell you, up until recently, I understand it's much improved now, but I could tell you not this weekend prior, people were coming in our airport and not being advised to quarantine and just being able to walk in. I personally know of people who arrived and were not given those protocols. So, I mean, let us be real in terms of safeguarding the lives of people. There were some of us who felt in the earlies, the students in Wuhan. We have 14 or 15 Grenadian students in Wuhan. Some of us felt we should have brought them back in the earlies, and many people said no, they're where the virus is, let them stay there. And the students were never brought home. So my question is, why was that okay for our students in Wuhan and it's not okay for our nationals who are now in other epicenters, other areas that are now considered epicenters for the virus?
Caller, is all part of efforts to stop the continued spread of the virus. Most of the cases in the region, yes, they are imported from the UK, but they are returning nationals from islands. The case that Grenada recorded on Sunday is a Grenadian national returning home. At least 40 of the 51 cases in Trinidad or 40 Trinidadians returning home. So that's part of the efforts to stop the continued spread from restricting movement between various countries. Let's go back to the phone lines. Good morning.
Hello?
Yes, good morning. All right, children are home and playing. Ms. Joseph, there was some pointers you were making in relation to the Grenlec issue. I am not sure if you completed your statements, your thoughts.
Right. The other thing about the Grenlec is this. One day government is now peddling is that one of the reasons why the agreement was a bad one is because they didn't make provision for generating electricity from renewable sources, solar, wind, whatnot, and they needed to breach the agreement. They needed to repudiate the contract with WRB in order to get that done. Complete dishonesty again. Not true. First of all, Blossom, in 1994 when that deal was struck, renewable sources of energy like solar, wind, and whatnot, that wasn't a thing. It wasn't really a big thing, right? That's a fact. So the agreement, yes, didn't place a lot of emphasis on those sources of energy. I could tell you between 2008 and 2012, when the NDC was in office, the NDC engaged in very advanced discussion with Grenlec to generate electricity using renewable sources. There was the arrangement with private owners. We all go around and we see from time to time the buildings with the electricity panels on top. Private homes, right? And that is by arrangement between Grenlec and the private citizens, facilitated by the NDC government during 2008 and 2012. And these people actually sell electricity to Grenlec. So it's happening already. It's happening already. Then there was an agreement between Grenlec and River and Twine people for generating electricity by wind, right? That was an agreement that was being worked on. Then there was the wind farm in Carriacou. Then there was a lot of work done on the geothermal source of energy. So the Grenlec management and owners, they have always been interested in working with the government to finding other sources of energy. The other thing too is that I know, because I will disclose here, that between 2009 and 2012, I actually sat on the board of directors of Grenlec. So some of the matters I speak from personal knowledge. There was a lot of negotiation between government and Grenlec to enhance certain aspects of the share purchase agreement, because both sides, including the WRB people, acknowledge but that times change, the thing is dynamic. What held in 1994 as a good term of the agreement may not be so. So there's no indication whatsoever, and the tribunal said that in its judgment. There is no indication that the WRB people were resistant to renegotiating certain aspects of the agreement. No indication whatsoever. And in fact, the tribunal said that while the government complains that the WRB has not engaged itself in pursuing alternative sources of energy and all of that, the government hasn't done it either. That's what the tribunal found. The tribunal also said that there was no willful accusing WRB and Grenlec of malice and willful malfeasance and all of that. And the tribunal said they found no evidence of that. Paragraph 12 of the ruling.
There's a question on the WhatsApp that asks, if the NDC gets into power, will you carry out a full investigation into Grenlec affair and prosecute anyone who is found to be involved in wrongdoing?
Most definitely, including those who insist on doing harm to our country, including those who cannot let go of a personal vendetta. Imagine a personal vendetta is costing the taxpayers of Grenada over $200 million. Let me tell you this. If NDC gets into office, somebody or bodies will have to pay the penalty for that kind of misbehavior in public office.
Ms. Joseph,
and we will also sit with WRB and any other new interested party to negotiate new terms of the agreement, bearing in mind that this is 25 years and things have changed in certain areas, particularly in relation to renewable sources of energy and sources of generation of energy and that kind of thing. But they have gone about it the completely wrong way. Look at what the tribunal said in paragraph 12 of the judgment. It says the respondent here is a government, right, has not established either the procedural condition precedent or the substantive factual prerequisites to deny the claimant compensation on the basis of willful malfeasance.
Ms. Joseph,
the tribunal is saying, look, you're claiming willful malfeasance, but you're in no respect.
We would have to wrap up here at the moment. That hour flew by. It's time to wrap up. Any final words? 30 seconds.
Yes, the NDC encourages and reminds all Grenadians to follow the protocols, continue to follow the protocols established and announced by our authorities, the Pan American Health Organization, the World Health Organization. Wash your hands frequently. When washing your hands with soap and water, sing the happy birthday song twice. You must do it for at least 20 to 30 seconds. That helps to stave off the virus. Avoid touching your face. That also helps to stave off the virus. If you cannot if you do not have access to soap and water. I see some people complaining now, sir, that they haven't had water for 4 days. I see that on social media. We can't in this period have people without water. It's just not helpful. So hand sanitizer, if you don't have that, some good old Clark's coat and spirits and so, those things work. Also maintain social distancing. Give up on the liming for a little bit, the rum shop liming, the pot of food, cooking by the road, all of these things. Once you're in close proximity with people, you may be carrying the virus and not know. So stay at home as much as you can.
Thank you very much, Ms. Joseph. Thank you so much. We would have to end the program here, but as always, the NDC has a spot here at To The Point on Tuesdays every week. So we look forward to your contributions again next week, God willing. Thank you again for joining us.
Bye.
On that note, we've come to the end of this morning's To The Point. Thank you so much, those of you who viewed and listened to the program and participated. We are getting ready to start this morning's post-cabinet briefing, which will be chaired by Minister of Trade, Honorable Oliver Joseph. It is expected that the topic of conversation will be the issue, or the Grenlec issue, WRB, the judgment, and so on and so forth. So be sure to tune in to post-cabinet briefing here on Classic. For those of you on GBN channel 7, 11 and 20, we now turn over to this morning's homeschooling program for all our students who are home. That begins at 10. So on television, it's homeschool. On radio, it is post-cabinet briefing. Have yourselves a safe, productive Tuesday. As of this morning, there is only one confirmed case of COVID-19 in Grenada. And as I said yesterday, I'll repeat it today. Let one be one. Continue to do what you need to do to stay COVID-free. Until I'm back again with you tomorrow, God willing, have a productive Tuesday.
The Grenada Airports Authority wishes to advise the general public that the